Maybe you've heard about the coronavirus.
We begin with breaking news this afternoon. Someone in North Carolina tested positive for the coronavirus.
The NCAA canceled both Division I men's and women's 2020 basketball tournaments.
All of our lives are going to change in some way.
High Point Spring Furniture Market is postponed.
I am officially declaring a national emergency.
Governor Roy Cooper issued a stay-at-home order for the entire state of North Carolina.
Forecasters now predict the unemployment rate could reach as high as 20%.
Phase one of reopening.
It'll be the first time in a month and a half some businesses will be able to open their doors.
Phase two now just 2 days away.
And it won't really feel back to normal just yet.
We'll continue toward the school year working together with everyone's safety in mind.
Safer at home, phase 2.5.
And many fitness centers and gyms will reopen for the first time in nearly 5 months.
After months of waiting, phase 3 of the reopening plan is just days away.
Places like bars and movie theaters will be allowed to reopen for the first time in months.
Breaking news in the fight against COVID-19. The FDA approves the first coronavirus vaccine in the U.S.
Today's achievement is a reminder of America's unlimited potential.
We are not out of the woods. One of the reasons we can be optimistic is that as a community, we really are adopting these 3 W's. And if we do the vaccines, these 3 W's, we can make this pandemic go away.
It's hard to believe it's been 1 year. On this day, 365 days ago, North Carolina confirmed its first coronavirus case.
Today, more than 850,000 North Carolinians have tested positive. More than 11,000 have died. In all, COVID-19 has killed more than 510,000 Americans.
Now, whether or not you got the virus, we all dealt with the pandemic's symptoms. Stay-at-home orders, shuttered schools, people wondering how they'd pay the bills.
The old saying goes, hindsight is 20/20. Well, the year 2020 has been one of the most challenging in our lives, oftentimes painful, but not without moments of hope and happiness.
Over the next hour, we will take a look back, how the pandemic reached the Piedmont and beyond, how towns and cities came together in a crisis. With renewed clarity and context, let's revisit 2020, the year in the pandemic. It started in China, the first case confirmed in December 2019 in Wuhan. Weeks later, the city of 11 million people was locked down. They deep cleaned the streets. Anyone walking around outside had a mask on. The doctor who blew the whistle on the virus later died after getting infected himself. U.S. leaders started screening airline passengers coming from the area, and on January 21st, the virus reached our shores.
Today, the CDC confirmed a second U.S. case was transmitted person to person, the spouse of a Wuhan traveler. There are 82 tests pending, including 3 in New York City.
Americans traveling around Asia are struggling to find flights home.
It's way too early to try and predict the beginning, the middle, or the end of this epidemic right now.
It started in Seattle, Washington. A man who traveled to Wuhan tested positive. Global airlines started suspending flights to China. Airline passengers were quarantined.
In early February, the Trump administration banned Chinese foreign nationals from traveling into the U.S., but the virus continued to spread here at home.
Cases started to pop up in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York. The numbers were small, and local leaders and also state and federal leaders, as well as experts, had this to say.
I still feel that we are not at risk, right? Right now, what we know is that the folks that are exposed have had direct contact.
Well, the first thing is don't panic. We've actually lived through this, and to some extent in 2009 when the swine flu came through, and we all did fine.
The threat of the coronavirus spreading in the United States remains low, but the people of this country can be assured that we're ready.
It's going away. We want it to go away with very, very few deaths.
I don't think this is something that the United States public should be worried or frightened about, but they should know that we are taking this obviously very seriously as it evolves.
This outbreak could still go in any direction.
Well, soon the infections became deadly. The first deaths in the United States came in Washington state, killing multiple people at a local nursing home. State labs started to increase testing capacity. Stocks dropped. Study abroad trips were among the earliest cancellations as the virus reached South Korea, Italy, and more.
Sometimes we forget the science behind how this started. COVID-19 is a virus. Scientists believe it originated in a bat. So how does it spread so fast, and why is it so dangerous? Let's quickly go over the basics. COVID-19 is a type of coronavirus. We've seen others in the past known as SARS or MERS. The one discovered in December 2019 is SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19. It's super small. This is a lung cell. Do you see that tiny yellow speck? That's COVID-19. Inside the virus is RNA, a type of genetic code similar to our DNA. Bunches of the virus use little protein spikes to attach to cells in the body. The spike contains the virus genetic code and gets sucked into the cell. Once inside, the virus uses the cell to start making copies of itself. Those copies get released and attached to other cells. Symptoms include fever, cough, shortness of breath, and far more serious conditions in the elderly and people with underlying health conditions. COVID-19 is a respiratory virus, so cells that are infected collect in your airways. When you breathe, sneeze, or cough, the particles that come out carry the virus. If you're close to someone, the particles and the virus can end up in their body. That's how most viruses spread. The major problem with COVID-19, we didn't already have a vaccine or treatment. Without a shield, one infection can become 2, then 3, then 10, and dozens more in a short time. That's why health experts stress social distancing to cut down on the exponential spread.
We spent weeks watching the virus brew in cities and countries thousands of miles away. But on March 3, 2020, North Carolina confirmed its first case.
Someone in North Carolina tested positive for the coronavirus. The person is in Wake County and traveled to Washington state. We're told that person is doing well and is in isolation at home.
Local health department officials are working to identify who else may have been exposed to help contain the spreading.
Several emergency declarations were announced today, including Greensboro and Guilford County.
Here's the local list so far. The list will likely get bigger.
The advice of these experts have led us to give new guidance to North Carolina residents and to declare a state of emergency for our state.
What happened next was unlike anything we have seen before. Major events from concerts to basketball games were canceled. The ACC tournament abruptly ended in Greensboro. It left the Coliseum stands empty and our economy in a tailspin. The NCAA tournament came next. No more March Madness. Then the NBA regular season. Then the Masters, the NASCAR season. Local traditions and events put on the back burner. High Point Spring Furniture Market was postponed, then canceled. The RNC was moved from Charlotte to Jacksonville, Florida, after a heated back and forth between the president and Governor Cooper. The grand opening for the Tanger Center in downtown Greensboro, canceled. Fun Fourth, canceled. The Lexington Barbecue Festival, canceled. The greatest homecoming on earth, canceled. Organizations and people alike scrambled with limited information on a virus we didn't yet understand.
The NCAA canceled both Division I men's and women's 2020 basketball tournaments. So this means there will be no March Madness games.
It's going to hurt the service industry. It's going to hurt the gig industry. It's going to hurt everything.
We sat out here for 10 hours yesterday just prepping for people that can't come to the game.
Another major announcement due to coronavirus concerns. The Tanger Center for the Performing Arts in downtown Greensboro says its grand opening has been postponed.
Tens of thousands will not come to High Point for the spring furniture market.
I'm certainly not happy about it. It's a big economic hit, not only to the city, but also to the county and to our state and to our region.
Knowledge was essential in the early months of the pandemic. Governor Roy Cooper and the state health department gave frequent updates. President Trump and the White House Coronavirus Task Force briefed the nation daily.
I think one thing that is clear is all of our lives are going to change in some way in response to
this virus. We must sacrifice together because we are all in this together and we'll come through together. It's the invisible enemy. That's always the toughest enemy, the invisible enemy, but we're going to defeat the invisible enemy.
The best scientifically proven tool we have to slow the spread is keeping our physical distance and staying at home.
People, they want to get back to work. They got to make a living. They have to take care of their family. They don't want to do this.
It wasn't just presidents, governors, and lawmakers disseminating the information. Experts charted the path forward. People like infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci and Dr. Deborah Birx. At the state level, Dr. Mandy Cohen. At the local level, infectious disease expert Dr. Christopher Uhl of Wake Forest Baptist Health, and many more. Even before the virus reached our area, experts from across the globe shared warnings of what could come next. Hearing their words so many months later is chilling.
If you lose somebody like this that we could have potentially isolated and got on the right path, and then more people are exposed, that's how we lose control of this.
Unless we get this globally under control, there's a very good chance that it will assume a seasonal nature.
But at some point, it's possible that we have to start planning for disruptions in how we live.
200 million adults, 40% becoming infected, yeah.
So 80 million
That is a lot of
people.
people, yes. I think there's a reasonable chance that there will be public gatherings will be restricted. If it really does spread as widely as that projection says, and that's what I think is likely to happen, then there are going to be millions of people dying, and I don't think there's any way to get around that.
We will have coronavirus in the fall. I am convinced of that because of the degree of transmissibility that it has, the global nature.
This needs to be federal guidance so that every state understands that it may look like 2 cases today that become 20, that become 200, that become 2,000. And that's what we're trying to prevent.
Reflecting on these many months spent in a pandemic can be chilling. We remember what we lost. We also remember what we learned.
As we look back together, we asked some of our local leaders to do the same. School superintendents, city mayors, and health experts, each with a unique perspective on the last year.
You'll hear from them across the hour. They dealt with unpredictable, unimaginable crises. In the earliest days, they shared your fear, your anxiety, and your resolve.
I certainly never thought that we'd be having this conversation, 10 months later, that we'd still be in the thick of things, that, the numbers would be in the place that they are now. I had no idea how long lasting this problem would be.
I think we all were concerned about it, but until I heard the words, people are going to die unless you take some action, that certainly got my attention, obviously.
I had never heard of anything like this or experienced anything like this in my lifetime as it relates to a virus that was killing so many people. And I, be honest with you, I didn't think that it was believable that it was going to kill 100,000 people.
I've gone back and looked at my calendar. On March 3rd or so, we had our first COVID meeting, and we've had a COVID meeting every day since March 3rd until now, every single day, 7 days a week, sometimes multiple meetings just around COVID.
I try not to Monday morning quarterback a crisis, right? You know what you know in the moment, and you have to make the best decisions you can with the information that you have in the moment.
The panic didn't last forever. Temperatures cooled, but the consequences were only beginning. The story only starting to unfold.
Countries, states, and cities had to do something. Mass testing sites, lockdowns and stay-at-home orders, the rise of social distancing. In 2 minutes, we dive into how the country and culture adjusted.
We will be executing a stay-at-home order.
A state of emergency for our state.
Restaurants moving their business to the curb and workers wondering where the next paycheck will come from. This is the next chapter of the coronavirus response.
Rarely do you see the parking lot at Friendly Center look like this.
It's like a ghost town around here,
4.4 million people filed for unemployment benefits last week.
Nobody answers the phone. You get a recording, low staff, heavy call volume.
I've never seen anything like this in all my life.
I never thought I would experience something like this.
I'm dead in the water. I've made no headway into this process whatsoever.
Phase 1 is designed to be a limited easing of restrictions.
Phase 2 now just 2 days away. More businesses will be able to reopen on Friday.
More than 1.4 million people filed for unemployment benefits last week.
Once you're out of everything and you put your home up, you refinance your home, when you have nothing left, what do? Do you sell your car to save your business that may never reopen?
Businesses closed, parking lots and streets empty, millions without a job, unemployment department phone lines jammed, families struggling to make ends meet. Extreme economic fallout was and continues to be a major symptom of the pandemic.
We have followed business owners for months as they scrambled and struggled. Some are still going, others just couldn't go on.
WFMY News 2's Marissa Tansino shares their stories of reflection and resilience.
It was honestly one of the most scariest moments in my entire life.
Closing her doors in March 2020 started a sobering reality small business owner Angel Putnam is still living in 1 year later.
Every day that we wake up and we can open our doors, it's a blessing.
Putnam owns Pigtails and Crew Cut Salon in Greensboro and Winston-Salem. She remembers vividly the fear that took over when Governor Roy Cooper ordered businesses to close and North Carolinians to stay home last March as COVID-19 started to spread.
To look at them and say, we're closing our doors and I don't know when we're going to come back, or in all honesty, if we're going to be able to come back.
The governor's first stay-at-home order only initially set to last 30 days, but business owners felt this would last longer, like Mary Hagland, owner of Mary's Gourmet Diner in downtown Winston-Salem.
They gave the approval to go ahead and open, for to go at first. I was like, don't do it, don't do it. I just was very nervous about it.
The diner, a popular spot on Trade Street, was coming up on its 20th anniversary. Just months before the milestone, Hagland decided the time had come.
The type of food that I served, it was not to-go food. And also, we were very touchy-feely. Like, there was hugging and kissing. You stood in line on the weekends. The dining room was jam-packed. By saying I would have to rebrand is really true. It would have to start and be something different. It wouldn't be Mary's.
So after nearly 2 decades, Mary's Gourmet Diner closed. But what was an end for some was only the beginning for others, like Machete owner Tal Blevins.
To have to change our vision after being open for 3 weeks to something completely different, it was wild.
3 weeks after the Greensboro restaurant opened, the pandemic forced them to pivot their vision and operation.
The first 3 weeks that we were open, we were packed every single night. So it was great. It was really looking good for what we were going to do. Obviously, when COVID hit, we took a big hit. It basically put our projections about half of what we thought we were going to be.
Time passed, restrictions eased, and while pushing forward paid off for some.
We, I believe, are going to be just fine. We have been maintaining recently. It's, we have some months where we're up a couple $1,000s. We have some months where we're down.
Others are still trying to hang on, even through the darkest days.
That I was down 52.6% to last year. And I ended December with a $10,000 loss. And January's not looking too much brighter.
These small business owners built their dream from the ground up.
We want to have hope and we want to stay positive.
And now their livelihoods are on the line.
I don't know that 2022, my doors would be open. It's still a battle, it's still a fight.
But one that's worth fighting for every single day.
Support, shop, love small businesses. We need you guys now more than ever.
Marissa Tansino, WFMY News 2.
In May, lawmakers passed an enormous stimulus package called the CARES Act to provide some relief. It supported an influx of cash for the Paycheck Protection Program, billions of dollars for health departments, schools, rent assistance, and unemployment boosts, all to the tune of $2 trillion, the largest economic stimulus bill in U.S. history. And who can forget the most popular provision of all, the $1,200 stimulus checks. Everyone of a certain income got one. It was just one piece of the newly forming quarantine culture. Despite the challenges and difficulties, people always find silver linings. The new wave of Zoom hangouts and TikTok trends gave us a reason to smile. 2 On Sano's Ben Briscoe looks back at how we connected socially while staying socially distant.
Since we first learned the word coronavirus, we've gone from wearing work clothes to workout clothes, even though we're not really exercising, just sitting on the couch. Still, that's given us a lot of time to do things like perfect those TikTok transitions. It is all part of what sociologists are now calling the quarantine culture. For a slice of life during the coronavirus pandemic, remember baking banana bread?
On the inside, they'll be nice and gooey and perfect for your batter.
This is awful.
Laughing at Leslie Jordan.
It's still March. How many days in March?
Or tearing through Tiger King's episodes in 1 week. To talk about your coronavirus cultural highs and lows. Hi, thanks for joining. What's better than hosting an open Zoom call?
It's been the food, mate. It's been the food.
Yeah, what about the food?
Trust me, before quarantine, I was eating salads. During quarantine, you know, it's just been... I've been eating lasagna for the past 2 days straight, my dude.
And there's no shame in that game. And of course, all the TV shows. From Bridgerton to... Streaming services gave us oxygen.
You know, it's at least something that we're all watching. We're all kind of stuck in the house. It's escapism for a lot of people. That's fun, and that's pretty much the way to keep connected.
But as we laugh together about Moira Rose, UNCG sociology professor Todd Madigan says the thorny part of all this is that America actually became more divided.
One of the most interesting things is while shared experiences have the potential to create a sort of social energy that can unite us and give us a sense of community. Well, it's been actually difficult to come together around it because as it stands, we don't have a shared understanding of what the pandemic is, right? Is it a hoax? Is it caused by 5G?
In a recent NPR Ipsos study, they gave out 10 true or false questions based on basic facts about the pandemic. More than half of Americans failed the quiz.
I mean, it's much easier to unite around things like the Tiger King, right? Or Zoom meetings gone wrong because the stakes are lower. Right? We're not politically or morally invested in these things, so we don't feel as though our identity is threatened by them.
So if we really want to come out of this pandemic more united, the professor says we have to learn to talk about the deeper issues together. Just like we have all this fun stuff. And we've got to hurry because the clock is ticking.
As quickly as it all took hold, the fads faded. After a while, quarantine shifted from novelty to necessity. Working from home meant blurring the lines between the couch and the conference room. Mask mandates passed in states all over the country, including North Carolina. Businesses found the new rules would last much longer. It became difficult to be sterile and social. The pandemic was not going away. The new normal started to set in. 6 feet can feel like a mile. The pandemic posed an enormous question for schools, teachers, and parents, in person or remote. The early days of the pandemic, families didn't have a choice. Districts across the country closed their buildings, shifting class online.
Over the summer, many school leaders weren't sure what to do, bring students back or develop a strategy to stay remote. Turns out there were no perfect answers.
Most schools started online only and then shifted to Plan B, a mix of in-person and remote. Districts gave parents some options, all virtual all year or wait for the green light on re-entry. The waiting game turned into a series of delays, pushing re-entry back week after week after week.
The stress on families was and remains intense. WFMY News 2's Jess Winters spoke with parents, students, and teachers. Some are back in class, others are still waiting.
Where do I even begin? Let's start with March 2020. Every district in the entire state closed its doors. That was an order straight from the top.
The executive order has another key component. It directs all K-12 public schools across our state to close for students.
Oh my goodness, I thought it was going to be like 2 weeks. I thought it was going to be, they were going to go in and disinfect.
2 weeks turned into the rest of the year. It's now 2021, and we're still dealing with the back-to-school nightmare. I've spoken to so many teachers who pushed for a return.
Safety protocols are there. The teachers have been ready for months and months.
And others who were, quite frankly, terrified.
Our teachers and staff are literally risking their lives to be in school right now.
Some parents say this isn't just about physical health. Their children's mental health is in ruins from remote learning.
For the first time in her life, she actually thought of what she could do to take her own life because she saw no hope of ever being able to leave this house again.
He's recently had to get on some antidepressant medications.
Some made virtual work out of necessity.
He has two little sisters. They're younger, so I'm more afraid if he were to go back into school, he would bring something home.
A few even thriving.
He's been doing really, really good. His grades have been fantastic since he started remote learning.
The majority just surviving.
Last semester, my 7th grader for the first time got 3 Ds, a C, and a B, and he was miserable.
Common ground could be found in the frustration of flip-flopping reentry schedules. Plans sometimes made, delayed, canceled.
These kids have been jerked around since basically October.
Mount Airy Schools, one of the only school systems to have a clear plan from the get-go. The school system reported 60 COVID cases in the fall, about 3% of its overall population. Superintendent Dr. Kim Morrison believes it proves full reentry can be done.
We felt like the safest place for them to be was back at school.
A district of less than 2,000 students compared to 70,000 plus. School leaders from larger triad districts say it's like comparing apples to oranges. It's why individual boards were left to make their own reentry decisions. But this month, Governor Cooper urged those boards to offer more in-person options. New scientific evidence shows it's safe.
Even with the thousands of students and teachers attending school in person across the state, we have seen few COVID-19 clusters in our public schools.
This, coupled with the announcement that vaccines for teachers are on the horizon.
Once we're vaccinated, this is going to be one less thing to worry about in a really, really challenging school year.
Soon, kids will get more face-to-face time with teachers, something students like Chloe Cole have been begging for.
It's not quite working. Online school, we were all kind of rushed into this. Teachers weren't prepared to teach online. Students weren't prepared to kind of take on this new task of learning everything by yourself. So I think it's just a lot, and all students are kind of struggling.
The complete reopening holdup is complicated. For the biggest triad districts, lack of space for social distancing is a big issue that's forced most into AB schedules.
There still is concern around mitigation with regards to just the simple infrastructure of our schools.
1 year later, I can't bring you the back to school, back to normal happy ending we all hoped for.
We don't have any concrete answers that we can lean on or go to. It's just we're fending for ourselves right now.
Even when every single student can walk through their school doors every day, the proven pandemic learning loss will linger.
Most North Carolina schools are offering in-person learning now. Experts say we've learned enough in the past few months to know that the risk of spread in schools is low. Still, as community leaders reflect, they recognize how much has changed.
There's nothing in our preparation that helps us to be ready for a worldwide pandemic. You know, we train for tornadoes and inclement weather and other natural disasters. We train for active shooters, all of those things, but nothing prepared us for this. And there was no one we could go to assist, to mentor us, to coach us through this, because no one had been through it.
It seemed temporary at the time. It seemed like something that you could see the end already. Okay, this is going to be a couple of weeks and then we're going to move back to normal. But that hadn't been the case. Here we are almost a year later and that still hadn't been the case.
I feel bad for the parents because they have to work, but lots of them have kids at home, and juggling those multitude of roles is I don't know how they do it.
We're a Wake County public school family, and so we were actually in person for some of the time, but we've been doing a lot of remote learning, and I have to acknowledge that I am married to the best partner on earth. My husband is amazing and has been carrying a lot of the load of what's going on at home so that I could do my work for the folks of North Carolina.
Back in July, it felt like our state reached its coronavirus peak. We all hoped the numbers would drop.
They stayed low for a moment, but with the fall came a case resurgence. Even President Trump and Senator Tom Tillis caught COVID. Healthcare workers overrun, more loved ones lost than ever before.
But a solution was on the way. Just ahead, we meet the men and women saving lives and mourn the lives we lost. Plus, the light at the end of the long, dark tunnel gets a little brighter. We're back in 2 minutes. Last July, we thought North Carolina reached its coronavirus spike. But come October, the numbers started rising. 2,000 cases a day, then 3,000, sometimes more than 10,000 cases in a single day. The number of hospital patients also climbing higher and higher. Even former President Trump tested positive. A helicopter brought him to Walter Reed Military Medical Center in October. Doctors gave him a special treatment. Within a few days, he was back at the White House.
I think I'm doing very well, but we're going to make sure that things work out.
I came here, wasn't feeling so well. I feel much better now. We're working hard to get me all the way back.
Senator Tom Tillis also tested positive that same day. He says he didn't have any symptoms. In the last few weeks, our state's coronavirus data has come down. Hospitalizations, cases, and percent positives, all trending in the right direction. Keep in mind the numbers are still higher than anything we saw in the first 5 months of the pandemic.
No one has felt the strain that comes with the surge in cases like healthcare workers. Doctors and nurses working around the clock, cloaked head to toe in protective gear.
They have moments of relief when a patient goes home, moments of despair when a patient doesn't make it. For them, these moments are fleeting because as soon as one person no longer needs their care, another's waiting. I spoke to frontline healthcare workers about the last year and the moments that'll stick with them forever.
I would say there was nothing that could prepare us for what this year was going to look like.
What a year it's been for nurse Erin Bull and her team at Wesley Long Hospital in Greensboro.
I think it was one we just had to kind of roll with the punches. We had to communicate, we had to adapt, we had to change a lot of the ways that we used to do things.
The assistant director of the ICU vividly remembers the first days and weeks of the pandemic.
When COVID initially came, it was a lot of staff were fearful, they were concerned. I was fearful, I was concerned. And so we had to provide quick education. We had to get the rooms up and ready to take care of these COVID-19 patients very quickly.
Since then, Bull says they've been tested over and over again.
There's been some shifts that have pushed us to our edge, and there's some that we've had to lean on each other for.
A continuous cycle that's had plenty of ups and downs.
We've seen really sad times and we've seen miracles happen. We've seen patients that by all accounts shouldn't have survived, and they do survive.
It's been a similar year at Wake Forest Baptist in Winston-Salem.
It's been a lot of work, more work than arguably most of us have done in our entire careers.
ICU doctor Ashish Khanna says this is the kind of work you take home with you.
People think that we take care of a lot of patients and they're just numbers for us, but let me tell you, that is not the case. When we have conversations like these, they stay with you, and they've stayed with me, and they're always going to stay with me.
ICU staff have learned to take on a family member type role as patients deteriorate in a quarantine zone.
There are others who held my hand, who said things like, please tell my wife that I love her.
Each of Dr. Khanna's patients has a different story and a different outcome, but at the forefront of his mind, Shammy Dorsey of Lexington. The 18-year-old's severe COVID-19 illness caused pneumonia and a heart attack. The teenager spent 2.5 months in the ICU, but eventually recovered.
This was an incredible feat. So definitely he stays with me in my mind, and he's going to stay with me forever.
For Erin Bull, it's the best and worst outcomes that stick with her.
We've cared for multiple family members in our unit. Many of them didn't survive. I think about the ones that didn't, and then I also have to remember the ones that did.
Considering all they've been through, both doctor and nurse are confident we're headed in the right direction.
To hear that really our community is wearing their masks, the vaccination clinics, people are getting vaccinated. It makes me feel like there might be some light at the end of the tunnel.
I strongly believe that we're going to see the other side of this. We've just got to believe in ourselves and our ability to be resilient and do the right thing.
The CDC reports more than 513,000 people have died from the coronavirus. Many were known nationwide. Many more were known by their neighbors and family, sheriff's deputies and firefighters, teachers and community leaders, grandparents and great-grandparents, mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, all loved, all gone too soon, the victims of a relentless virus. Early in the pandemic, a Piedmont community lost a beloved law enforcement officer. Bud Fong was an SRO in Montgomery County. He died in May at just 43 years old. In January, the high school he served renamed their mascot after him. Our photojournalist, Brent Patterson, captured the effort to fill the hole he left behind and the love students and staff had for him.
Bud was a school resource officer. Bud was a wonderful person. The kids loved him. He built great relationships with the kids, and he was everything that you would want in an SRO. You know, I think Bud was the 8th person in the state of North Carolina to die from the coronavirus, and now we're approaching 8,000. At the time we were building a brand new school, we were consolidating East Montgomery and West Montgomery. We already knew our mascot was going to be a timber wolf, and Bud was really a supporter of this school. We thought, what better way to honor him? You know, I could see him wearing that mascot suit and wanting to be the one, you know, leading the pep rally. This virus has taken so much, and this was the really good man that this virus took. And I wish I had truly told him what a tremendous impact he made. Because more than anything, he was my friend. And of course, I'm going to crack up a little bit now. But I wish we'd had more of a chance to tell him, you know, what an impact he was making.
After months of pain with seemingly no end in sight, a glimmer of hope, a vaccine. The FDA approved emergency authorization for 2 shots, Pfizer and Moderna. Just last week, Johnson & Johnson got theirs approved.
The drug companies included tens of thousands of people in their trials. Both came back with 90% effectiveness. The FDA deliberated, and within a couple weeks, the first doses of the vaccine shipped off, a vital step toward getting back to normal.
Scientists developed the COVID-19 vaccine quickly. It's a credit to brilliant research, advanced technology, cutting red tape, and a flood of funding. The speedy process has raised safety concerns for some. It helps to know the science behind the vaccine so we don't have to be skeptical. Let's walk through it. Developing a successful vaccine means saving lives. A vaccine teaches the immune system how to fight off the virus. It stops the spread in our body and prevents us from getting sick. But there are different ways to do this. A traditional vaccine contains the virus itself, but it's dead or a weakened version. That's how the flu vaccine works. But the one for COVID-19 is different. It's called an mRNA vaccine. It doesn't contain the virus at all. It contains genetic code to deliver to cell proteins. It teaches the cells how to make virus-blocking antibodies without ever seeing the virus itself. When you get the vaccine, it triggers this response in your body, creating a shield so the virus can't hurt you. It's called immunity. The COVID-19 vaccine was created in record time, but it still went through rigorous trials. Phase 1, testing safety and immune response in a few people. Phase 2, testing safety and effectiveness in a larger group. And Phase 3, testing safety and efficacy in thousands of people. 2 vaccines approved in the United States are from Pfizer and Moderna, both with over 90% effectiveness. Both require 2 doses several weeks apart, and that's normal. Other vaccines requiring more than 1 dose include chickenpox, MMR, and tetanus, which requires 3.
I went to work and I said, I got my shot appointment, and everybody started clapping.
I got vaccinated sticker. that I'm real proud of.
I needed to do my part for the good of everybody. This is very important. We're in such an unprecedented time.
How many loved ones have people got to lose before they take it serious? That's my one thing.
We are just extremely grateful and happy to be able to offer this gift to everyone, to be well on our way to having that immunity.
It is extremely important that it's at 94 and 95%, because it means that we can get to our goals of herd immunity much more rapidly.
The vaccine went through every aspect of the FDA's normal approval process before it was allowed to be administered to anybody in the United States is the first thing that is a fact.
Let's start with the fact that the vast majority of us want to be vaccinated.
More than 2 million North Carolinians have gotten their coronavirus vaccine. Many more are desperate to get a shot.
It's a solution to a long and difficult struggle, a light at the end of the tunnel. Experts say if 70% of Americans get their shot, the pandemic could be under control in the matter of months.
The side effects are minor. The research is sound, but some are still skeptical. Many of our loved ones and neighbors feel this way.
WFMY News 2's Stacy Spivey spoke with several people to find out why.
4 North Carolinians, 4 different walks of life. Sydney, Anna, Sarah, and Nadine. All 4 navigating life in a pandemic.
It has felt like this year-long twilight zone.
And looking forward to the future. But as far as how we get back to normal, it looks different for each one, especially when it comes to the COVID-19 vaccine.
As a Christian, I'm not afraid of death. So there was no fear of dying, but there's a great joy of living.
Sidney Wheatley is a pastor in Greensboro. He got his first dose of the vaccine in January, a decision not taken lightly, especially coming from a man of color.
Because of our cultural experiences with vaccines in the past, I was a little bit hesitant.
But after losing a dear friend to the virus, he got vaccinated in his honor. And it was fear that held Nadine Dorner back at first. As a medical professional in Greensboro, she had the opportunity to get the vaccine, but she passed on her first chance.
My first gut thought was, I'm not being a guinea pig.
When a second shot came around, she chose to put her personal feelings aside.
I need to do this for the people that I love and the people that I care about and the people that I'm around.
The same opportunity soon to be available for Sarah DeMose. She works in oral surgery in Greensboro, a job that puts her at risk for COVID-19.
We definitely wear like multiple masks and shields.
But she's choosing to opt out for her future family.
I am personally hesitant about it, because I have one daughter so far. I'd like to have other kids.
DeMose recalls a medication she took when she was younger, now taken off the market because it can cause abnormal births. It's the reason she wants more research done on this vaccine before she rolls up her sleeve.
Because of my age and because of what I want, I'm not interested.
Fast-paced and science do not go together.
Thomasville resident Anna Grace Smith has completely ruled the vaccine out. The massage therapist grew up taking vaccines, but a combination of the speed of this vaccine and her health made her into what she calls an anti-vaxxer.
I have currently been battling undiagnosed autoimmune disease for the past year, which is another reason I will not get this vaccine.
While all 4 have different opinions on the vaccine, all can agree this has been a difficult season of life. Losing loved ones, losing a job, tackling virtual learning with kids, and even converting a closet into an office. All ready for an answer, for an end to this virus, whether it's this vaccine or not. For WFMY News 2, I'm Stacy Spivey.
It's important to note there is no evidence to suggest the vaccine causes infertility. Governments across the globe threw billions of dollars into the vaccine. Experts affirm the scientists who developed the vaccine did not cut corners, and it remains the only solution to a pandemic that's infected millions and affected millions more.
The struggles aren't over. North Carolina's unemployment rate is at 6.1%, higher than this time last year, but far lower than the 14% mark we hit last April. Governor Cooper says 95% of schools in our state are offering some form of in-person learning, but some students still spend half of the week remote. Many families continue to choose virtual learning only. Over the last month, we've averaged more than 3,000 new coronavirus cases per day, but far more are getting vaccinated. In the last month, we averaged more than 21,000 new vaccinations per day.
The past year hasn't been all bad. We have seen so much good. Everywhere you look, people found ways to make each other smile. Neighbors making masks and care packages for each other. Families celebrating birthdays with drive-through parades. There are so many good stories to share and so many more to come. But the ones that stand out are told by the survivors, the ones who beat the virus and continue battling it today.
For one triad woman, her doctor said she wouldn't make it, but her mother said God had a different plan. WFMY News 2's Tracy McCain shares her story.
These are the moments Stacy Petros holds close. Her daughter, Tiana Hairston, doing what doctors said was impossible, surviving COVID.
I could not envision her in a pine box or in a casket. I could not envision her in the ground. And so when my family said, what are we going to do? And I said, we're going to believe. And that's what we did.
We were there in October when Tiana left rehab and a grueling 6-month stay in the hospital. Through home videos and pictures, the family is revealing the part of Tiana's recovery most people would never see. What started as a loss of taste and smell last May.
She felt okay. She, just had a sniffle, maybe a small cough.
Spiraled into multiple debilitating strokes and cardiac arrest.
I love you so much.
She looked at me and her eyes were going different ways.
Brain damage.
Everything that you see white is dead. And so her whole entire brain just about was white, both sides.
Blood clots and doctors fearing the worst.
When she coded, it meant her heart stopped. She stopped breathing, stopped everything. She died for 30 minutes. It was the longest 30 minutes of my life.
Stacy prayed
to call on the name of Jesus
and waited for any signs of life.
There it goes. Hallelujah. Wake on up, girl.
Some days are tough.
Never letting fear take the place of her faith.
They called in hospice. They said she was not going to survive. If she did, she would be a complete vegetable. They said she would never smile again. She would never breathe on her own again. She would never walk again.
Your daughter really is a miracle.
She is. She absolutely is.
Progress is happening. Tiana's smile is back.
You need to want to get better so we can get away from each other.
She can walk with help and is back to saying just a few words.
Her memory, as you can tell, is, still a little off.
But it could take years of rehab and therapy for this 26-year-old talented poet.
Rehearsing my thoughts, never understanding the script that was handed to me.
To share in her own words the battle that almost took her life.
Thankful. So grateful. There's not a day that goes by that I don't thank God for her being here.
We asked Tiana's mom if there was anything anyone could do to help. She simply asked for encouragement and prayers as she helps her daughter through this next phase of her recovery at home.
The pandemic isn't over, but its grip on the world is loosening. People are still in the hospital and testing positive, but far more are getting the vaccine.
Elected officials, healthcare experts, and educators who've tackled the crisis from the beginning say now more than ever, there's a reason to have hope.
I think what captures the most attention is seeing those frontline healthcare workers and nurses working night and day, dealing with people who had gotten this illness, and their hard work, perseverance through this whole thing has been absolutely amazing and inspiring.
I know this pandemic will end. We will come out of this, but we have a lot of work still left to do, and I know folks are tired of this. I am tired of this. My hope for the future is that we get more vaccine supply as quickly as we possibly can, that we get it out to everyone, that everyone takes the vaccine.
Certainly there is hope, and over the past month and a half or so, when vaccines were approved and became available, there really has been a sense of hope and some relief now that we are giving out vaccines. Our staff who are doing that work are thrilled to be doing it because they are delivering hope and perhaps delivering the beginning of the end of this pandemic.
I think that we will be in a whole lot better shape sooner rather than later. I would hope that by the fall of this year, we would have 85% or more of our citizens vaccinated, and we can get back to normalcy.
This will be over at some point. It seems like it's been going on forever to all of us professionally, personally, but there is an end point to this, and we will come out better for this. The children will be better.
Just to make sure that students have a place to go and learn during the day, or a place to get food if they need it during the day, or a place just to reach out for someone if they need it. So this community has really come together, and that's probably the bright light in all of this, is watching how everybody has pulled together to make things happen.
We've seen companies and individuals reinvent themselves to fill a need. When there was the need for the PPE, we've seen companies come together and provide masks and face shields and gowns. For Cone Health and for others, we've seen people provide food. We came together as a community like we always do.
I'm just very proud of the city, the resilience that we've shown forward, and I think it will we'll come out of this even stronger, hopefully.
And personally, I just intend to love more deeply, love my family, my friends, spend more time with them, take time with them, because so many of us, I can't think of any family that has not experienced some loss in this last year. So I would implore everyone to just love more deeply than ever.
Over and over, you've heard the pandemic described in big, broad terms: unprecedented, once in a century, historic. But it's hard to see this past year merely as a moment in history or a chapter in a future textbook. The relentless flurry of changes are real. The struggles are real. We all felt it. It's personal.
The last year isn't just the story of the country or the world. It's the story of you, your family and friends, your leaders and role models, your coworkers and neighbors. We don't look back on this year to revel in our role in human history. We look back to learn. Crisis breeds innovation. Adversity brings growth. Reflecting on the pain and pressure helps chart the path forward in your story.
The pandemic will end. A new chapter will begin. Hindsight is 2020. Let's use the lessons and clarity to better ourselves and our world for all the chapters ahead. Thank you for joining us. WFMY News 2 at 5 is next.